This should be interesting. Thank you, Ashley. Spelling's not the best. Gary and Jaime. Jamie, this is going to be good, this. What's your 1, 2, 3 out of Gerrard, Lampard and Scholes? Go, Jamie.
Well, I said mine, didn't I? Everyone knows I'd go Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes.
Why?
The reason being, I think they've been 3 world-class players, and people may argue with that. I think maybe they haven't all hit the heights for the country in a tournament, but in terms of what they achieved in Champions League, we're talking about players who've won it, got to finals, semi-finals. But the reason I'd put Stevie in top for his big game influence, Istanbul, Cardiff Cup final. Lampard next for the same. He scored the winner in an FA Cup final. He scored in a Champions League final. He scored the goals that won Chelsea the first title. I'd just put them slightly ahead of Scholes. I think what Scholes did and what Stevie is now doing has changed in his game a little bit. Whether Frank will do that, I don't think he will. Stevie's starting to get into that Scholes role of holding and dictating the play. So maybe he did change his game, if you like, Scholes, but that's the order I'd put them in.
I mean, I don't like doing predictions. I certainly don't like doing...
Gary, don't sit on the fence. I know you made Scholes.
I certainly don't like doing comparisons because they're 3 completely different players. But all I will say is that Paul Scholes is the best player I've ever played with. And they're all fantastic players. I mean, you think of Frank Lampard's career, and I think that you mentioned it in what you wrote the other day about he's made himself into a player and the work he's put in. You see that every single day that you see him training. Fantastic player, goal scorer. Steven Gerrard has been a massive player for Liverpool. For me, Scholes was the best player I ever played with because he's a unique talent. He controls the tempo of a whole football match.
But compared to the other 2 what I mentioned there in terms of that...
I'm not talking about scoring a goal, I'm talking about controlling the tempo of a whole football match.
But do you think that coming as later in his career went into that sitting role? That was Roy Keane's role, wasn't it?
I would say 2004 to 2010, 2011. For me, controlled...
Do you think Scholes was better then than when he was playing in the attacking role?
Yeah, I think when Scholes sat back... Basically, if you had Paul Scholes on your team in training, we did possession every single day. So we played at a club that based its whole philosophy on possession. So every single day was about keeping the ball. And Sir Alex Ferguson, quite simply, we're a counter-attacking team as well, but quite simply, Alex Ferguson was intent on control of the football match. He had a player... There's not many of them, by the way. You talk about Pirlos, you talk about Xavis, you talk about Paul Scholes, not goal scorers. They're not players who make what you call... I mean, Paul Scholes scored goals. I'm sure that Xavi and Pirlo scored goals. But they control the tempo of a whole football. When to play long passes, when to play short passes, when to actually slow a game down. And for me, Paul Scholes had a unique talent.
So he controlled games, yes, but the point Jamie's making is, did he win enough games? If you look at Lampard's numbers, he won games.
Well, you talk about winning games. I mean, you don't just win a game by scoring a goal. I mean, there are a number of ways to win a game, by the way. How many times... People used to say about Manchester United, winning games in the last 5 minutes because of what? Because they had players who kept the ball off the other team and knackered them out for the last 85 minutes. Paul Scholes was a big part of that. I mean, literally, he would control the tempo of our football. Everything would go through him. So the idea that you have impact players... So you talk about a Giggs who was one of the best dribblers, or you think about a Beckham who was one of the best crossers, you talk about Keane who was a fantastic midfield player, you talk about Ronaldo who was a wonderful goal scorer, he had incredible impact, but they needed somebody to glue it all together, and there was the glue in the middle, and that's, to me, is a unique talent. The ability to control the football match. I think, to be fair, Steven Gerrard in the last few years has had that ability as well. When he's gone deeper, he's had the ability to control the football match more than he'd do when he was younger. But for me, Scholes was the best player I ever played with because of that unique talent.
But why do you think then, you were looking, we were there together with England, and Eriksen ended up putting him on the left. Why would he have done that if Scholes was so important, as you're saying, in that holding role?
Well, that's like saying, why did Rafa Benitez and Ule put Steven Gerrard on the right? I mean...
Well, Lampard and Steven Gerrard were playing so well at the time.
But why would Steven Gerrard end up on the right?
Well, Lampard come into the team, didn't he? Scholes and Gerrard, wasn't it, to start with? And then Frank Lampard come into the team.
But on that point, you know full well why Paul Scholes was put on the left. It was the easy option. Simple as that. I mean, you had a Beckham on the right, you had a Gerrard and Lampard in midfield, and the only one you could put to the left was Paul Scholes. Simple as that. So it was an easy option. It was taken by the manager at the time. But for me, Steven Gerrard played on the right for Liverpool for a number of years. Doesn't mean to say he's any less a player. I mean, I wouldn't do comparisons between Gerrard, Scholes and Lampard. I never would do, because they're completely different players. All great players, by the way. And to try and find 3 of them into the same 2, Scholes actually was the one that had to be sacrificed. Was that right or not? I'm not sure. But I'd say Paul Scholes was the best player that I ever played with, and I played with some decent players.
Well, why did Ferguson buy Veron?
Because Paul Scholes was poor.
No, but I mean, what I'm saying is, he's that similar position, wasn't he? No, listen, Paul Scholes would say, I played in training with Paul Scholes. He said, you come home from England training, who's the best player? People ask you. Paul Scholes by a mile. And a brilliant world-class footballer. We're not trying to... But what I'm trying to say is, the reason I've put them in there, I'm trying to make my point why I've put them in that order. You know...
Look, I'm not... Look, everyone's got an opinion. I'm just saying nothing in reflection on Frank Lampard or Steven Gerrard. And to be fair,
I'm the same on Scholes.
It's like the Messi and Ronaldo. Who's the best? I don't like doing comparisons. Because at the end of the day, you're talking about two completely different players,
We need
different
to leave it
types.
here. We could go on all night. Ashley, well played. Brilliant.